You know, I really didn't think I'd ever be making a knitting hot takes video. I'm kind of the opinion that most knitting hot takes that you see on the internet are clickbaity, if not rage baity, and that's not really the kind of content I'm interested in making. But there's been a storm recently, yesterday and today, and storms always get me in a bit of a weird, like, pensive mood. And I realise I have been sitting on some quite strong opinions, and I can't get them out of my head, and I'd like to share them with you. I am going to try and bring a bit of nuance and perspective taken to my opinions, so if you want to like continue the discussion in the comments, I just ask you to do the same. Be nice to me. None of the takes I'm going to be sharing with you are actually anything to do with the act of knitting itself. They're more to do with like the wider knitting community, some comments I've seen on Instagram, and like things adjacent to knitting. I'm not here to police like what you want to make or how you go about your hobby. You know, if you want to like never make a gauge swatch or only knit white sweaters for the rest of your life, that is nothing to do with me. But I do care about like popular trends I'm seeing in people's perceptions and that sort of thing, so that's what I want to get into. I am going to be working on a project as we speak. This is going to be a pair of crochet micro shorts eventually, and I am crocheting through the back loop only, so my apologies if I don't actually look at you very often. I cannot do this without looking at what I'm doing, but I assume you're also working on your own project, so hopefully we're fine with that. My first two hot takes are both around the word privilege when used in relation to knitting. Now, of course, knitting is a privilege in some regards. Like, it is a privilege to have enough disposable income to buy like the minimum materials that you need to knit, and of course it's a privilege to be able-bodied enough to knit, as I'm sure a lot of us have experienced when we've like knitted too much and hurt our wrists or given ourselves eye strain. It really makes you grateful for your body being able to do this craft. But that's not what I've seen being discussed. I have seen so many comments of people saying that it is a privilege to have enough time to knit. And I think that that is not only wrong, but I think that that's quite dangerous wording to use. It should not be a privilege for us to have enough time to engage in our hobbies. And if you do have a lifestyle that you don't have any time to spend not purely on the survival of yourself or your dependents, like not working or caretaking, I'm so sorry that our society has failed you in that way, but please let us not normalize that. We need to fight against this idea of it being seen as a privilege to have any amount of time to yourself. But I also don't think that these comments are said in good faith. I think that they have an air of victimizing themselves in them, because all of these commenters have enough time to scroll through Instagram reels and leave these comments in the first place. And sure, it is a privilege to have loads and loads of time to knit. I think there's a lot of interesting discourse that other people have covered already that talks about how knitting influencers can make knitting seem faster than it is. Like all of these, can I knit a sweater in 24 hours, or can I knit a sweater in a week, every week, or here's these 10 new items that I've made in the past month. Like, that is unrealistic for the average person, and I think most of us realise that. Like, these people, and I'm including myself in that, like knit and crochet full time, right? So it makes more sense that we are making more garments than an average person would. But saying that you don't have enough time to knit at all and then making that the fault of someone that's just made a colourwork sweater in 2 months seems to me kind of like these people don't want to admit that knitting is a secondary hobby for them. Because, for instance, I am always saying, oh, I wish I had more time to read. Oh, if only I had more time to read. I would love if I had time to read more. But truthfully, I don't actually want to read at all hours of the day, and if I did, I would make it happen. Like, people who are really into reading books, they're like taking every spare moment to read. They're reading on the train and they're reading on their lunch break. If reading is your primary hobby for you, you will find the time in the in-between moments of your day, or when you just really want to switch off and relax, reading is what you'll turn to. And for me, reading is not what I turn to. I would much rather knit and watch YouTube videos. I would rather scroll on my phone. Scrolling on my phone is closer to a primary hobby for me than reading is, which is a bit sad to admit, but like necessary to know where my spare hobby time is going. Knitting for me isn't an active task or something that I'm putting in my diary to do that day. It's something that I'm doing to switch off. But it's totally okay to admit that knitting is a secondary hobby for you, and that's why you knit a lot less. You know, I don't expect, with the amount that I read and like to read, that I would finish a book every single week, but I'm not gonna judge and call out someone that does. I don't know, I feel like maybe I'm missing a link in this take. because I still can't fully understand it. I don't know if it's coming from maybe a place of envy of seeing other people's like fully hand knitted wardrobes and wanting that themselves without having to put all the work in. I don't know. My other hot take around the words knitting and privilege is that knitting with non-acrylic yarn is not a financial privilege. As you may know if you've seen my channel already, I have a bit of personal beef with synthetic yarns, and I'm also going to reference this in a different hot take. Obviously synthetic yarns have their place. If you sometimes knit with synthetic yarn, this isn't aimed at you. But I sometimes see, like, especially like young crocheters only using acrylic yarn and with the excuse that they can't afford anything else. And I just don't think that that's true. Like, I think cotton yarn is the same price as acrylic yarn, but there are also so many other sources of yarn. Like, you can buy yarn secondhand, you could buy sweaters secondhand and then unravel them if you want some really beautiful yarn for very cheap. I mean, if you look up secondhand wool sweaters on Vinted, you can get yourself a sweater quantity of yarn for under £10 if you want to. Using exclusively acrylic yarn purely for price reasons, unless you're maybe making like the world's biggest blanket or something, you know, it doesn't make sense to me. And to me, it sounds a bit too similar to the argument people use for shopping on Shein. Obviously, like, nowhere near as environmentally bad as shopping on Shein, but people will excuse shopping on Shein because of the price, but in reality it's because of the ease and the instant availability. And if that is your reasoning for using acrylic yarn, just because it's easy, that's fine, but say that. Don't say that it's because of the cost. I do also worry though that people are saying that about acrylic yarn because the knitting community has normalized luxury yarns. Like, I am at a place now where it sort of means nothing to me to drop like £80 on a sweater quantity worth of yarn because I know that it's worth it, I know that I will love it, and I have the means to afford it. Also, I can write it off as a tax expense now. But as soon as you enter the knitting community, you hear a lot about, like, you know, these brands, you know about them, like Knitting for Olive, etc, etc. And maybe you want to start knitting with cotton merino or wool, and you hear about Knitting for Olive, you look it up, you see the price, and then you think that all natural fibres cost that much. And there are so many yarn stores that if you walked into as a beginner, you would get the impression that knitting with natural fibres is expensive. And that sort of brings me on to my third hot take, which is about yarn brands. I don't think yarn brands should be producing as much synthetic yarn as they are. Now, in my head, there exists two massive sects of yarn brands, yarn stores, and yarn websites. There are the bougie luxury, natural fibres only, Knitting for Olive, Isayer, all that on one end, you know, expensive, beautiful quality yarn. And then there are like the hobbies of the world, the wool warehouses, the large yarn websites that sell a variety of brands. And just like scrolling through Wool Warehouse, it just always has me thinking, like, why is there so much acrylic to choose from? And I don't know if you've had this experience of seeing on Google Maps that there's a yarn store in your area, then popping your head in and just realizing that it's floor to ceiling acrylic. But that makes me very sad, especially for, like, you know, if maybe older people who don't know how to order online and just want to knit with what's locally available and only have acrylic to choose from. But also, you know, as a beginner, you could very easily fall into the trap of that last hot take that I mentioned, where you think that acrylic yarn is cheaper than natural fibres, or that it's the safer option in some way. Why do so many of these large yarn brands, especially yarn brands being sold in person in a lot of places, why do they have such a large selection of acrylic, and can't they do what drops to us and put more effort into creating like affordable natural fibres? I don't know, like, we as individuals can only ever have so much environmental impact one way or another, right? I mean, I'm certainly not the world's biggest like sustainability warrior. We all see how many flights I take per year, but I feel like brands can have some sway that matters. And I know that none of them are anywhere near as detrimental as any sort of like fast fashion brand or anything, but I just want to know, like, where is all this acrylic yarn going? I've put this next take in my phone as stop telling me to not wash my clothes. I'm a bit scared to get into this take because I know it's going to have some amount of backlash. I have been told multiple times by multiple people that because wool is self-cleaning, I never have to wash my clothes. And I don't want to hear it anymore. There's one comment that I saw over 6 months ago now, and it lives in my head rent-free. It was this one person claiming that because wool is self-cleaning, they only ever spot wash their babies' woolen poopy clothes. And after I saw that comment, anytime I've seen anything about wool being self-cleaning, it's like, it's in one ear and out the other. That's not my circus, that's nothing to do with me. Like, you can wash your clothes as little as you want to, but you can't get me on board with that. I think it's important to like let people know, especially like people new to knitting, that you don't need to wash wool stuff as much as you need to wash the rest of your clothes. Like, yeah, of course, that's not common knowledge and it's very good advice. I don't wash my wool sweaters very much at all, but in the same breath, feeling clean is very important to me. Regardless of whether or not I am actually clean, if I don't feel clean, I'm miserable. And I think a lot of people can say the same thing. And yeah, my sweaters will last a lot longer if I never wash them, but they're also going to last a lot longer if I never wear them, which I won't do if I feel like they're dirty. I think in the same vein, it rubs me up the wrong way a bit when people are very militant that no one should put their knits on hangers. Like, again, there's one thing spreading advice and resources on how to best take care of your knitwear, but at the end of the day, if someone's wardrobe is in a configuration where they can only see their clothes if they're hanging up, that is a better solution than folding up the knits, putting them in a box or a shelf somewhere where they never get seen and then they never get worn. I guess maybe this all ties into what I said at the start about me not policing your knitting, but I am policing the police. My last point I've just written in my phone as I don't want to be on skinny talk. I am going to get a bit into body image in this one, so if that triggers you, if that's not your bag, protect yourself. This is my last point, so you're not missing anything else. I can love you and leave you. Come back next week if you want to see what my shorts look like. But for the rest of us, I want to talk a little bit about the Instagram algorithm, or at least my Instagram algorithm. So I have been a fashion and beauty and lifestyle micro-influencer for a much longer time than I've been a knitting influencer. Oh, it still makes me cringe to say that word. That's my own shit. I've got to work through that. I need to say it with my chest. But I have been creating content on Instagram for many years now. And for a while, the content that I was seeing and engaging with mainly was fashion content. And something that I started to notice on fashion Instagram is that my explore page was dominated by very slim women. And not only that, but like my peers, like other micro-influencers that I was mutuals with, the ones that would blow up and get big and have hundreds of thousands of followers would also be the very slim women. And this was all when I was a bit younger, and what I realised, although I have a great relationship with my body, a happy, healthy body, and I'm a straight size and I have no dysmorphia around that, I started thinking, maybe I would go viral if I were thinner, which is not a good track to send your mind down. And I had to do a lot of reeling it in and a lot of intentionality and self-awareness around it to get a hold of those thoughts. But I realised now that 100% of the content that I'm seeing on my Instagram is now knitting content and not fashion content. It's got the exact same problem. And I don't know whether it's just my algorithm. I have actively tried to fix it. I make sure I follow and engage with people that have all types of bodies, as well as a lot of like faceless and bodiless knitting accounts where it's just like flat lays. And yeah, it's all over my Explore and my Reels tab. And I don't really have like a conclusion to draw from this. I just wanted to speak about it consciously and make sure that I'm aware of it and make sure that you're aware of it too, because I think that seeing all this content can warp your perception of your body if you're not careful. I've also noticed that it can influence my pattern buying tendencies. So clothing brands do this really intentionally, right? Like if you scroll through ASOS, for example, all the models will have like an aspirational body type. And for me, at least, I need to be really aware of the fact that I might not actually want the item of clothes being sold to me. I want how the clothes look on that body type. I want to buy the clothes, but what I really want is to buy the clothes and the body. And Depop sellers also know this trick as well. I never even use Depop anymore because I'm fully converted to Vinted, but when I open it up and I look on like the explore page or whatever it is, there's so many people modeling like size 14 clothes held together at the back on a size 6 body. So you have no idea what the clothes will actually look like on your body, but you just know that that pair of jeans looks great on that body, so maybe it will look good on me. Like it's a kind of obvious trick. And if Depop sellers know this trick, I'm sure that pattern designers know this trick too, either consciously or subconsciously. And that's why it's so important to have testers, right, with so many different body types, so you can see someone that looks like you modeling the item of clothing and make a decision on whether or not it will look good on you. But I have noticed, I've looked on my Instagram Explore page and a lot of patterns catch my eye, but then I have to really ask myself, is it the pattern catching my eye or is it the body that it's displayed on? And there's no like wonderful little way to wrap this up one way or another, because there are some very talented pattern designers out there who also have this body type, and it's more a fault of the Instagram algorithm for favouring this one body type than it is anything else. Now that I've said all this out loud, I'm not actually sure that any of these are very hot takes, but I've enjoyed chatting to you and I've made a little bit of progress on my shorts. I'll have a project vlog, hopefully with the finished shorts on these out next week, if you want to see what they look like. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I want to hear about your opinions too. I actually really like doing a knitting chat or a crocheting chat. Maybe I'll do this more often. I hope you're doing well and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!